Hello again, Year 6, Miss Erin here for your second topic session of this unit for World War II. Now, last lesson we looked at the causes of World War II and how certain events and certain people led up to the declaration of war. And today we're going to look at the preparations for war, particularly how Britain and the British people prepared themselves for the Second World War and how they tried to protect themselves as best they could. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video now and write today's date and title. Okay, so our learning powers for today are making those links, so making links to what we've previously looked at in terms of World War II, but also what you already understand about how Britain prepared itself for war, from what you've discussed at home, what you've taken in from non-fiction books, anything like that. And our other learning power is reasoning, so understanding why Britain believed that these preparations were necessary and linking it into our British values. Okay, total recall. Let's start with natural disasters. What do we call the jigsaw-like pieces of the Earth's crust that shift slightly every year? Evolution. What do we call the process of change that occurs over time which results in an animal being better suited to its environment? And ancient Egyptians, who discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. Pause the video and have a go at those questions. Okay, so natural disasters, those jigsaw-like pieces of the Earth's crust are known as tectonic plates. The process of change that occurs over time, that's evolution and using adaptation. Who discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922? That was Howard Carter. Okay, so we are going to watch a little bit of a video. I'm sorry if it is a little bit spotty. Sometimes when you record videos through recording this video, it makes it a little bit look a little bit strange. But I will send this link to you as well as your topic video, just in case you want to watch it live instead of watching it through this one. And our key question here, our higher order question, is why do you think the British people made preparations? Why do you think these precautions needed to be made? Had they learned from World War One in terms of how they were affected and how much damage was done to the country? Do they know more about the weapons that were going to be used? Do they know more about the people that they're going to be responsible for? All those kinds of things. Okay, so let's have a little look at this video. And the key thing here that you're looking for is what advice is given about how to prepare. All right.
When a high explosive bomb falls, any building near is likely to be destroyed, and any house hit is sure to collapse. The rate of supply of Anderson shelters is limited, but every householder can take measures for protection against blast and splinters. He can do the work for himself using scrap materials and earth. From any post office, you can get a booklet, price reference, which tells you just how to make your home an air raid shelter. To protect a window, fix an old door firmly across the lower half, inside and outside, first removing the glass, and fill the intervening space with earth. An earth barricade about 30 inches thick will protect your front door from blast. Cover the earth with old lino to prevent rain washing it away. A similar earth rampart will protect a basement or area window. The best way to protect a room from glass splinters is to stick curtain netting or old lace curtains on the glass itself. There are ample supplies of netting now available. This will not prevent the glass breaking, but it will stop dangerous splinters flying about. Spread the paste evenly and cut the material so that it overlaps the frame as well as covering the glass. A well-filled bookcase placed before a window gives good protection against blast and bomb splinters. To rig up one room in your house as a refuge room, a small room, and give it all the protection you can. A coal cellar is a good refuge. Make it comfortable, you may have to stay in it a long time. It's up to you to take these precautions, not only to save your own lives, but to ease the work of the Civil Defense Forces. raiders pass signal sounds, you'll emerge safely thanks to these simple safeguards which you can make for yourselves. The full instructions are in the booklet. Go to the post office and get a copy today.
Okay, so there you go. So those kinds of reels would have been, or those kinds of videos, I should say, were shown in movie theatres a lot of the time, because households didn't have TVs and things. So when they went to the movies, they would see clips like that. Like it says, they can go to the post office and collect a booklet on best ways to protect your house and things like that. So there were many different ways that the British people prepared for war. And we're going to look at a selection of them today. So they had gas masks, over 38 million gas masks given out by 1939. They believed that gas was going to be used against the British public, but in actual fact they were never needed, but people had them in cardboard boxes with them at all times, just in case. There were barrage balloons put up to stop low-level German aircraft, and because of them, German aircraft had to fly higher, which meant that their bombing raids were not as successful, or their bombs didn't hit targets that they wanted to because they were having to dispose of them from such a high height. We had blackout. Actually blackout was put into place 2 days before war was actually declared, and this was the system in terms of people used to try and not let any light escape from their houses, so it wouldn't aid enemy aircraft from when they came to do the bombing raids. They had different types of shelters built. So this one here is an image of an air raid shelter, but there were several different kinds of shelters actually we're going to look at in a second. They used sandbags that they put up against buildings and windows to protect from bomb blasts as much as possible. And really important, sort of making those links, I suppose. What do these images tell us about how they were preparing for war? Well, I think in ultimate, it kind of shows that they were very certain that bombing was going to happen. Historically, during World War I, bombing was used. They were quite scared about gas attacks because, again, this was something that was used in World War I. And they basically wanted to try and protect the structure of the buildings that they had in place already, so that when war was over, it wouldn't have such a damaging effect on the buildings, and trying to save as much life as possible. Okay, so we've already looked at a couple of those, but these are a list of certain preparations that really stand out, that the British public put into place in order to sort of protect themselves during World War II. We said about sandbags already, the role of the ARP wardens, and they were responsible for making sure the blackout was being done properly. So if they saw that light was escaping from a house, they would alert the residents to that. They took detailed reports of any damage being done during bombing raids. They tried to reunite families that were separated, all that kind of stuff. We talked about gas masks, barrage balloons, trenches in parks, so that if people were out and about and the sirens were called and they couldn't make it back to their shelters, they could go to a public shelter or a trench in parks. Blackout we talked about. Signposts was a massive thing. Signposts all across the country were taken down because they believed that if German forces actually managed to land on British soil, or even German spies, that they would get lost because there was no signposts up to tell them where they were, which I think is quite intuitive actually. Dad's Army, or the Home Guard. Now these were made up of men and women that possibly could have been too old to serve, out in the fighting force, so they sort of protected the home front. They looked after key targets like factories or munitions buildings. They patrolled the seafront to check for any German forces arriving by sea, and all that kind of stuff. They often patrolled fields at night because they believed that German paratroopers would land in these fields and they could take them hostage. but they weren't a fighting force as such. They were more of a preventative force. So they were initially designed to sort of slow down the German forces if they managed to land on British soil. ID cards were issued to every person, including children, had their name, address, important information about them on there, just so that people knew who they were. And it also could have been used as like trying to reunite with family that separated during a raid or anything like that. Barbed wire on the beaches to sort of stop German forces getting up higher on the beaches. Lots and lots of preparations were made. Some were very effective, some weren't. Some were useful, some weren't. It depended on the location in the country and the threats that actually became realistic. Like I said about gas masks, they never actually had to be used, but they were there in case they were there for precaution. So we already talked about shelters, but they were essential. The shelters managed to save thousands, if not millions, of lives. And there were 3 different types, depending on where you lived and in what part of the country you were. They had certain ones. So we've got the public shelters, the Anderson shelters, and the Morris shelters. So this one here, these 3 images show you the Anderson shelters. Now these were given to people with gardens, and they were dug down into the ground. They were made out of corrugated iron, and they were essentially like a room. Had beds in there, people stored food, canned food. Sometimes they had electric running to it. They tried to make it as homely as possible because you could actually end up spending a lot of time in it. They put mounds of earth over the top, and a lot of people actually used to have that as an extra part of their garden. They would grow vegetables or plants on top of the Anderson shelter. 1, to disguise it, but 2, because it was an extra bit of land that they didn't have before that they could use. So that's the Anderson shelter one. Like I said, given to people with gardens, very effective, and were used quite a bit in London. This one here is of a public shelter. So caves were used a lot throughout Britain, but particularly in London, the London Underground became a huge public shelter. So when the sirens rang off and you weren't anywhere near your home, but you were near an underground, you could go into an underground. And actually on one of the busiest nights, 177,000 people stayed in the public shelters in the London Underground. There were sections of the underground that were never used, so they actually built beds in there and all sorts of, because they just didn't know how long people would end up having to stay there for. And actually these ones were lower, they were deeper in the ground, so they were a bit safer than to other shelters, because they could withstand a little bit more in terms of bombing. And this one here is of a Morrison shelter. Now these were kind of given to people who lived in flats or didn't have a garden as such, and they were essentially like a steel cage almost that you slept under. Now these weren't necessarily going to protect you from a direct bomb hit, but they were designed to protect you from any debris that might have fallen on you from a bomb blast. So they were kind of like, they were used as a table any other time, but they were very good for, if anything fell on top of you or anything like that, if you were inside this Morrison shelter, you have some element of protection. So that was all about shelters, and that's only one aspect of the preparations that were made to make sure that people felt safe and that they felt as protected as possible, as protected as you can be during a world war. So what you guys are going to do today is you're going to create sort of like a poster, if you will, or an information page about how the British citizens prepared for war. Okay, so there are WILFs. You can go and stick to them if you want to. I'm going to show you one that I've had a go at doing that was very quick and simple to do anyway. So it's completely up to you how much detail you put in. The more detail you put in, the more you're going to retain those. So that'd be good. But things that you could include on your poster are sections of information about all of these different preparations that were made. Very useful for later on in the topic. So that's that for you. So essentially, you're creating an information page about all these preparations. And here you go. This is the one that I had a go at doing. So this is a double page spread. You might not necessarily want to put in as much information as that. I haven't put any pictures in. Now, I'm going to send to you as well this additional information. So I'm going to send these to you because you might want to, if you've got access to a printer, print these out and stick it onto your poster if you want to, linking the sections of information that you're talking about to each of the images. So there's that. It gives you a list of the different preparations that were made, just in case you have forgotten, but it is in the video if you need it. And I'm also sending this to you, which is a preparations for war information pack, which has information about all those different preparations we've just talked about in there. So there's bits about the shelter and the different types of shelter, sandbags, the ARP warden, signposts. It's got lots of information about all those different preparations, okay? And you're going to use this information sheet and any additional research you want to do to create your own version of this. Now, like I said, I didn't print out those pictures. You're more than welcome to, if you so wish to, and stick them onto your page just to add a little bit more detail to it if you want to. And I just picked out key info from that information booklet that I'm going to send to you about the different preparations that were made. Like I said, the more detail you put in, the more you're going to retain. It might be that you decide to pick out 3 or 4 that you think were the most effective or the most important, and write about those. It's completely up to you. I did a little bit of snippet of information of all of them just to give you an idea of the level of detail that you could go into. But like I said, if you're going to pick just a couple, make sure that you put in lots of information about them. Okay? So I'll put this page back on for you just so that you know what you need to do. And don't forget to send pictures to your teachers. I look forward to seeing what you've been up to. Hope you've enjoyed this topic session. I'll see you again for another one soon.